I'm Ralph Norman from South Carolina's 5th District, and I've got my good friend Andy Biggs, who's in the 5th District in Arizona. Congressman Biggs, welcome.
Thanks, Ralph. Good to be with you.
This is going on the third year of President Trump's administration. As you know, had a Republican majority 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Didn't get border security. Why didn't we, and what's it going to take to get meaningful border security now, in your opinion?
Well, Ralph, I'm going to be perfectly candid. There was nobody on the other side of the aisle that wanted to do anything that was meaningful with border security. But then we also had a significant number of our own conference that didn't want to get there. We had a tough time getting the votes anyway. And what Congress tends to do is they don't go on a single issue. They don't say, let's do E-Verify because we want to make sure that people who are working are legal. They don't say, let's just fix amnesty, or let's fix H-2B visas, or let's build a border wall and find funding for that. They tend to throw everything into one big pot, create an omnibus bill, and they'll say, hey, Ralph, I know you want E-Verify. Can you support an amnesty for this group of people if we give you E-Verify? And so this kind of bargaining that goes on in Congress was highly unsuccessful, so we couldn't get the votes there. Whereas I think if they would have just done what President Trump initially promised was a border wall, we would have got that done. And we'd had the votes to get a border wall done. And then you could move to additional things like amnesty or whatever.
They tried to make it too comprehensive.
Exactly.
As you said, everybody wanted to get their piece of the pie that suited their particular district. It didn't happen. What is your opinion of, and I was in a meeting this morning that you and I were talking, that I was telling you about, where the drug cartels are controlling the tunnels that are 70 feet deep going into the United States. Now that the funding is complete, what is your opinion? Where do we go from here to handle the asylum issues, as an example?
Well, so Ralph, you've been down to the border, and I think a lot of people who've never seen the border don't have a full appreciation how vast it is and the wide open spaces. I didn't even take you to some of the places that have no fencing, whatever. So as we build the fence, you're going to see funneling or channeling of people coming across so the Border Patrol agents can get them and hold them. The problem is they're all declaring asylum now, and our asylum laws are broken. And so we end up holding them. We can only hold them for 20 days, and then they're getting released into the interior. We can't even do that for enough of them because we don't have enough facilities. So I think there's a way for President Trump to actually change asylum laws without Congress, because as you know, the Democrats control our body. They're not going to do anything to change asylum. So if the president were to take some executive power and say, freeze remittance payments. Now, remittance payments are transfers of money from the U.S. to Mexico of more than $30 billion a year. If he were to freeze those for a week or two, what's going to happen is he's going to provide incentive for Mexico to help us. We need Mexico's help. We can't get Congress to help us, so we need Mexico to help. And when Mexico helps us, they can sign on to an international protocol which says that they will hold the people in Mexico until we process them. The court ruling that came out that said that we can't hold them in Mexico, it would be obviated. We could ignore that because Mexico would have signed on to this international protocol. The president's going to have to use that bully pulpit. He's going to be able to get some of that things done. I think he's trying real hard. I think he's doing a good job. And I think as he does that, Mexico's going to have to respond.
What is your opinion on, we've got the right position on this. This should have been handled 30, 40 years ago. He's now, the road is at the end. We have no more cans to kick down the road that's ending. How do we frame this so the American people, when they see other than one network, all you see is children, innocent mothers, how do we bridge that gap with our message to put the human touch on it? Because, as you know, it's been characterized in not only the media, all forms of the media, newsprint, airwaves. And what would you say on that?
Well, I think we have to tell human stories. I think we need to talk about angel families. I think we need to talk about, like, if you're the Steve Ronnebeck, explain what happened to his son Grant by a person who'd been deported twice, who'd been convicted of violent crimes twice, who was continually stealing into the country, who pulled a gun on his son Grant at point blank at a convenience store and shot him in the head and killed him for no reason. Or you take a story like Brandon Mendoza, who was a police officer in Mesa, Arizona. He's driving his car home from work, and a drunk driver who's an illegal alien hits him head on. We have to appeal emotionally on this, and we have to speak about it. Everybody has to speak about it. Right now, I know you speak about it, I speak about it. There's another handful of people who know what is going on that speak about these things, but we're not speaking as a united voice as a Republican conference. Our party's not speaking as a united voice. Until we start speaking as a united voice, we don't get heard. But I will say this, I think the tide is turning a little bit when you get somebody like a Jay Johnson, who was Obama's Homeland Secretary, Homeland Security Secretary, say that there's a crisis along the border. You get Chris Cuomo, who's actually now starting to say it's a real problem on the border, when he's a CNN commentator. So when you get people like that, we have a shot to turn the narrative around. But until we speak with a more united voice, I think it's a problem.
Yeah, and when you have a Mark Morgan, who was with the Obama administration, say what a crisis it is. When you have all the groups coming out and telling about the financial burden that this country is under right now, to have people come in to the rate of 100,000 that we know of a month, and taking part of our medical system, taking part of our schools, taking part of tying up our police, our judges, the aspect of what this is costing the country that's already $22 trillion in debt. We've got to sell that, and we've got to relate it back to, in your case, Arizona, in my case, South Carolina, put it on a fact that it's costing our district $88 million a year for 15,000 illegals. That's a school. That's a community center. That's something for the public good.
$88 million is a lot of money, regardless of the size of the community. Well, here's a way to, I think trying to humanize it is important, but also to remind people of what we're talking about. So in Arizona, every year we get reports. When I served in the state legislature, we would get a report on the percentage of people in prison, Arizona prisons, that were illegal aliens, or it just gives the demographic breakdown. Usually about 13 to 15% of our prison population were illegal aliens. And you look at it and you say, okay, well then you would expect those convicted of murder to be roughly 13 to 15%, those convicted of rape, those convicted of other violent crimes. You would expect to be proportionally the same. They weren't. They were invariably twice as much. And the reason is because some of the folks that are coming over have bad intentions. They get here, and some of them are gang members, MS-13 members, other gangs that come in, and that's why we have to humanize this a bit, because people, I give the data and people say, yeah, but it doesn't necessarily touch my life. But it really does, because it increases the cost of your, everybody from in your justice system, which means they had a court-appointed attorney, there was a prosecutor, there were investigators, there were the arresting officers. You have the victims of the crime who need attention and care. You have the health care that they got. And in prisons, I don't know where it is anywhere else, but I know in Arizona the #1 cost is health care for prisoners and inmates now. And you start going on what that costs to maintain this system for those who are illegally in this country. And we're a generous country. 1.2 million people we let in legally last year. 1.2 million people. And then this is another 1 million people that are coming in this year illegally that we will apprehend.
Well, in the trip that you organized, you and I both saw I think he was a dentist who had been broken into 4 times. Yeah. And for him to describe waking up in the middle of the night with a hooded person with a knife, the fear that struck. When you see a Kate Stiley, gorgeous girl gunned down. And so putting that into perspective and letting people know that this is real, this isn't make-believe. The angel mothers you and I met with, right. It's a tragedy. Well, we've got a great opportunity. We've got a huge opportunity to show how inactivity, not doing anything, is not an option. We can't do that from a financial standpoint. We can't do it for Americans. We can't put that on the family. So I just want to thank you for what you're doing in Congress. You're a tremendous voice for doing the right thing and for putting something in place that should have been handled 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Well, I appreciate your work. You're articulate. You're a hard worker, and you're in there pitching. And if we need people who are doing that. And I appreciate what you do.
Well, it's an honor to serve. This is a great institution, but we've got to act now. We can't sit back on a lot of fronts. So I want to thank Congressman Biggs from Arizona for participating, and look forward to doing more with you, Andy.
Thanks, Ralph. Always good to be with you.
Good to be with you.